detention. While the High Court has ordered 6 police officers to pay 4 million shillings to a lawyer they arrested and detained illegally. They'll also pay 3.8 million shillings to 19 other people they arrested and locked up at Ongata Rongai Police Station. More details of our story coming up on your Star this morning. And a look at what's headlining on the Standard. Why impeaching Uhuru will be a tough call? Well, threat by some MPs to vote out president through constitutional provisions will not be easy given the threshold the Constitution sets for this to be legal and enforceable. Again, politics taking center stage even as we settle into the new year. And we also have at the top a report on lower doctors' fees out on Friday. And the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board Chairman George Magoha, yes, he is also a doctor, with other medical practitioners during an external stakeholders forum to review doctors' fees at a hotel in Nairobi. This is still ongoing and a lot of strides have been made on the same. And on the bottom, of course, Uhuru loses his close, quiet and humble friend. And of course, this is a bigger loss to the Kenyan fraternity, even as Bruce Odhiambo leaves us, and he was a celebrated music producer. Well, a lot more coming your way even as we follow up on some of the stories that are developing into the day. And speaking of which, here are the highlights of the day. A family wiped out by fire in Nyandarua. The rebellious Washenzi's statement, it continues in the political world. And DRC opposition candidate says no conversation around the results at the DRC. We begin with an unfortunate and heartbreaking incident that happened early this morning, and a community in Kipipiri, Nyandarua County is still coming to grips with the death of 5 family members who were burnt while in their home. 3 children aged 5 and 2 and an infant of less than 3 months and their parents were engulfed in flames while they were sleeping. Neighbors said they responded to the family's screams and did all they could to put it out, but the flames were spreading too fast, enveloping the home made of timber. This, they say, was made worse by a lack of resources such as fire engines, and had to resort to basic measures to battle the flames.
If we had a fire truck, we would have at least saved 3 lives, or at least 1, because that was our desire. Even if we don't salvage anything, we could at least save someone. But we were unable to do so because we have to get water from 200 meters away. How would we save anyone? Look, if there was a tap here, we would have at least plugged in a pipe and helped put out the fire.
The family of a female teenager who was raped and her private parts slashed in Homa Bay County is now asking the security agents in the county to fast-track investigations and ensure that the perpetrators are brought to book. The survivor of the attack is still recuperating at the Homa Bay County Referral Hospital and is in need of extensive surgery to repair her damaged private parts. We would like to warn our viewers that some of the details of what happened to her may be disturbing.
For the last 5 days, the 13-year-old girl has been receiving the best care the county hospital has to offer. This is after her year got off to the worst start possible. On the night of Thursday last week, she left her house to answer to a call of nature in a toilet outside her abode. She did not know that her life was about to change and in a painful way. She passed out. From what was to happen thereafter, those who attended to her pieced together the ordeal she underwent that fateful night.
Wakajaribu kumuingia, wamrepu, wakampata ni tight, yani venye nafikiria kivyangu. Wakachukua hiyo wembe, wakamkata kutoka huku mpaka huku juu penye anaenda na haja kubwa. So kumaliza hivyo ndo kaanza kumrepu, ndo akarudia kumkatakata huku hivi na wembe.
But that was only the beginning of her tribulations.
Walimaliza wakachukua hiyo kijiti wakamuingiza ndani wakaanza kukoroga ndani.
The tragic incident has left residents of her village and indeed the town angered, demanding justice.
Tunaomba tu usaidizi vile huyu mtoto anaweza kupona atoke hospitali. Vile uchungu vile anasikia uchungu si vile mtoto anatakana asikie. Juu sahi wenzake wanasoma na yeye ameenda shule. Ni ukweli hata ukuje uangalie mtoto ya mwenzako vile amelala si poa kwa binadamu.
The class 8 pupil is still unable to walk or take care of herself as she awaits specialized medical care that will see her undergo surgery to repair her private parts. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
Well, really unfortunate, and we hope that she gets the justice she deserves. Now, 3 Chinese nationals and a Kenyan have been arrested and detained at the Kilimani police station after police raided their apartment at Aberdare Courts in Kilimani Estate and found a number of wildlife trophies. Police recovered a live tortoise, large quantities of dog and game meat, leopard skin and elephant tusks. And as NTV's Mel Miendo reports, police also recovered millions of shillings in different currencies from the house that has now been cordoned off.
Police officers from Kilimani caught a tip-off that of information about Camp Trobi, this particular building. They approached this building.
Detectives who came calling on the occupants of house number 6, Aberdare Courts, along Kayawe Road in Kilimani, came about what they described as a revolting finding. A live tortoise, large quantities of dog meat stacked in refrigerators, and that produced an overwhelming stench the residents could not keep up with. A leopard skin, game trophies and 2 large elephant tusks. Residents here claim the suspects would move to and fro supermarkets and Chinese restaurants in the area, trading in not just dog meat and contraband goods, including cigarettes and alcohol, but also what police believe to be game meat. The 3 Chinese nationals are said to have lived in Aberdare Courts for over 10 years and had previously declined to cooperate with authorities. About 2 million shillings worth of goods was recovered from this house. A multi-agency team from the DCI, police officers and officials from the Kenya Bureau of Standards and Kenya Revenue Authority carried out the raid.
Once we have interrogated and established what is inside, we shall be able to take the appropriate action and not to prepare charges, which we are going to prefer against the suspects.
A search and recovery session that has taken over 8 hours here at the Aberdare Courts in Kilimani. Now, this is not the only house that is suspected to have foreigners who actually bring in contraband goods and even sell contaminated meat into the Kenyan market. Mel Miendo, NTV, Kilimani.
Well, to health matters and guidelines for the regulation of fees charged by doctors in private practice and getting closer to being approved. Now, a stakeholders forum organized by the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board listened to views from several groups today, but conspicuously missing were representatives of the Kenya Medical Association and the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. Doctors are opposed to the implementation of the guidelines.
Accessing healthcare in the country remains painful for a vast segment of the population. Cost of healthcare in Kenya has been on the rise, prompting discussions and proposals to regulate medical fees charged by doctors in private practice.
I think when you regulate this, let it be at a level whereby every Kenyan who is able to go to a private hospital have an opportunity to access those facilities. Because we don't choose to be sick.
The Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board held a stakeholders meeting aimed at ironing out the contentious issues in the proposed guidelines presented by the National Assembly.
I said let us have one goal of supporting the president to achieve universal health care. I would want government to empower private medical practitioners to contribute to the achievement of that goal.
Last Saturday, doctors stated that the ongoing process of reviewing doctors' private practice professional fees is being rushed and with inadequate input from the professionals. Health insurers also raised their concerns on the implications of high doctors' fee on medical cover.
If the doctor's costs go high, then that means the premiums will go high. And if the premiums go high, then the uptake becomes very low. Right now, as we are talking, the penetration rate is about 2.7%. Very few Kenyans have access to insurance. And the fear of the insurers is that this level is going to go far down if those costs are increased.
Civic groups were among those making their presentations. A representative of Parliament's Constitution Implementation Committee also made a presentation.
Looking at those fees, even before you go into the details, they are totally unaffordable. The Kenyans cannot be able to pay those fees. And looking at Article 46, where we are talking about access of healthcare by Kenyans, what are the difficulties? What are the things obstructing Kenyans from accessing reasonable healthcare? Among many other issues is the fees payable to the doctors.
As the debate gets hotter and the divide gets wider on the proposals to review doctors' medical fees, according to 2016 guidelines, KMPDB is expected to submit an official report to the Ministry of Health on Friday in regards to today's meeting. Eunice Omolo, NTV, Nairobi.
Education matters. Parents with children in private schools have raised concerns about the number of competency-based curriculum textbooks they have to buy for their children. Many of the parents say the books' contents by different publishers are very similar. Education Principal Secretary Belio Kipsang says the contents of the textbooks for the new curriculum have been harmonized. Now, education reporter Sharon Baranga has more.
This is a list of textbooks for the competency-based curriculum. A pupil in pre-primary 2 in one of the private schools in Nairobi is expected to have. The list has 10 textbooks, but the books have similar content, just different publishers. For example, this child is expected to have both Queenex Mathematics Activity Book 2 and Longhorn Mathematics Activity Book 2. And parents are concerned about why they have to buy two similar books. The situation is the same in another school in Nairobi. Pupils in grade 3 are compelled to buy two textbooks of the same subject, but by different publishers. For instance, for hygiene and nutrition, a pupil is expected to have Living Health Hygiene and Nutrition, a book published by Moran, and Everyday Hygiene and Nutrition, a book published by the Oxford University Press. In total, this pupil is expected to have at least 16 textbooks. Many of the parents declined to speak on camera for fear of victimization. The Ministry of Education says even though the government is applying textbooks to public schools, their contents have been harmonized.
We have taken all publishers through a competitive process, and our publishers have been very happy with us. I met the other day the KPA, and they have said whichever publisher will be awarded to supply the books, they will all support it.
Belio spoke as he visited a number of schools in Machakos and Makueni counties where he supervised the distribution of the competency-based curriculum books in public primary schools, as well as the admission of Form 1s through the National Education Management Information System, NEMIS. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
Now to some politics. Deputy President William Ruto has now cautioned members of a ruling Jubilee party against airing the party's dirty linen in public and should instead find ways of airing their grievances without disrespecting the party or the president. Ruto backed the president, saying no community or area will be left behind in the government's development plans. His remarks were echoed by a section of legislators from the Mount Kenya region who accused their counterparts who stood up to the president of being dishonest. This comes as Bahati MP Ngunjiri Wambogo led a protest in Nakuru against the president's rant. Vincent Odor with more.
President Uhuru Kenyatta's Washenzi rant may have rattled a section of leaders within the Jubilee Party. Bahati MP Kimani Ngunjiri led his supporters on a street march in defiance. All glad in t-shirts printed "Mimi ni mshenzi, je wewe mwana Kenya."
Mambo ya kutuweka pressure na lugha ambayo haijulikani, hiyo hatutaki. Akuje aombe msamaha na tukae pamoja. Na ninakwambia akiendelea matusi, tutaendelea hata sisi.
Police are said to be looking for the Bahati MP Kimani Ngunjiri after launching the movement in reaction to the president's utterances. But the storm had been kicked off by a section of leaders from the Central and Mount Kenya region who claimed the areas they represent had been left out of the government's development plans.
Kula milioni ngapi? 8. Milioni 8 imekuwa ni ya washenzi. Basi hiyo kula milioni 8, washenzi milioni 8, tutakaa pamoja. Na tutafuta tutaenda wapi na tutakaa namna gani. Na wale wanafikiria tunatoka Jubilee, hakuna. Watatoka Jubilee, watu wache tukae nini? Jubilee.
Deputy President William Ruto, speaking for the first time after a long period of suspense, echoed the president's remarks to the extent that the government will include all of the country's regions in its development agenda. On his Twitter page, the DP says the demands by a section of Jubilee leaders for more was understandable, but it must be tempered with what the government can afford. He says no region, community or Kenyan will be left behind. Ruto further says Jubilee members must use appropriate mechanism to channel their grievances and avoid unnecessary negative debate that only serves to undermine the party, its leadership and the president. A number of legislators from the region under the banner Mount Kenya Leadership Caucus have also stood up for the president, breaking rank with their counterparts who they accuse of being dishonest.
That as leaders from the region, we appreciate the work that the Jubilee government has done in our region since 2013.
Sasa ukisikia jumla ya kwamba kuna shinda ya maendeleo katika eneo la Mlima Kenya, hiyo ni siasa ya mtu anajitakia mwenyewe na sio jambo ambalo kama viongozi tunaweza kusema tunashikilia ama tunakubaliana nayo.
Other leaders from the region have also backed the president.
Lakini sio lazima upige duru, lazima uite magazeti ndio uongee na rais. That is wrong and lack of manners. Yes, that is lack of manners.
The politics of grandstanding, opportunistic rhetoric will not help Mount Kenya region. I would like us to sit down as the leaders of Mount Kenya region and strategize on how we can mobilize more resources from the national government for development of our counties.
Wabunge watachaguliwa na wamechaguliwa, alafu waamue kutusi rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Hiyo kweli ni desturi ambayo tutasema ati ni desturi nzuri? Hatuwezi.
The ruling party has been rocked by divisions since the political dalliance between President Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga, and with the Kenyatta succession adding fuel to the flames. Vincent Odur, NTV.
While the hearing of the new consolidated NYS corruption case has been pushed to Monday next week after the defense team successfully petitioned the court for more time to prepare for trial since they hadn't been served with the fresh charges as amended by the DPP. Now, the court directed the prosecution to serve the defense with the details of a new charge sheet that has a total of 49 counts. Meanwhile, the DPP has defended its decision to drop charges against 11 NYS suspects, saying it was grounded in law and wasn't due to a lack of evidence against them. Seth Olale with more.
For the second time, the defense lawyers in the consolidated NYS case, involving a total of 33 suspects, prevailed against the prosecution after the court granted their request to have the hearing postponed for at least 3 days. The accused argued they had not been served on time with a new charge sheet that contains a total of 49 counts and had only learnt about the DPP's additional charges yesterday.
Need time to liaise with her, sit down and interrogate the new charges that have now been preferred against her.
I don't want this to be a mistrial at some point. We can have another trial in order to clean these things up.
Joseph Riungu, who is leading the prosecution team, objected to the application to have the case adjourned, saying the law allowed the prosecution to amend charges even when the case is in motion.
Definitely, when consolidation was to take place, the amounts were definitely to change. But they have all the documents.
They are not charged afresh. They're going to appear in the other cluster of cases. but they have been charged in this particular cluster based on how we reviewed the files.
Principal Magistrate Peter Olo adjourned the case until Monday and directed the prosecution to serve the defense team with all the necessary documentation before the trial begins.
In the interest of justice and in further compliance with Article 50 of the Constitution, I am inclined to give the Defense Counsel 3 days to enable them prepare for the defense in light of the amendments introduced by the consolidated charge sheet which was furnished to the defense yesterday.
The DPP has in the meantime defended his decision to drop charges against 11 other suspects and protested media reports that the charges may have been withdrawn due to lack of evidence. He, however, did not give reasons for the withdrawal. One of the accused persons, Samuel Otieno, who appeared in court for the first time for the ongoing 3 NYS cases, pleaded not guilty to various charges against him. If all the directions issued by the court are adhered to, then you expect the first witness in this consolidated case lined up by the prosecution to take to the witness stand on Monday from 10 a.m. when the case, or rather the hearing of this particular case, will formally begin. Seth Olale, NTV at the Milimani Law Courts.
Now, did you know that borrowing as little as 100 shillings using your mobile phone and failing to pay it back in time could actually deny you access to loans for over 7 years? Well, this is the predicament thousands of youth currently blacklisted by various mobile lending entities face. And as NTV Silas Apollo reports, some experts are linking the problem to a lack of regulation in the sector and now want the central bank to crack the whip.
For most Kenyans, the advent of mobile loan applications could not have come at a better time. Now, one can easily access quick money from the comfort of their homes, office, or any other place so long as there is mobile phone coverage. But that convenience has come at a price, as some of those who borrow and cannot pay back are blacklisted for defaulting. Some experts are now linking the problem to a lack of regulation in the sector.
We talk about interest rate cap, but the question is, are they interest provided by digital loans capped? So there is a problem that no one is not addressing.
The burden, they say, has been heavy on young people.
Many of them do not have a big income, so they tend to think that borrowing from such sources is their way out to solve their financial issues. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Data held by the Credit Reference Bureau show that 500,000 people are currently blacklisted, up from the 150,000 people 3 years ago for defaulting on loans that they've accessed through mobile phone. Currently, there are 50 mobile phone loan applications for Kenyans to tap into.
There has been a split on whether digital loans fall under Communications Authority or CBK. So we are not sure what position is that government would want to take.
Even as the debates on the good and the bad of alternative loan providers continue, one thing is clear from Kenyans. They want the sector regulated to avoid what they have termed as exploitation of customers.
I was subjected that I'll not be given any loan from these loaning bodies because ya debt yangu kidogo.
Problem inaokaa kwa sababu most of the organizations that is coming up, I think they are not controlled. Or
there's a lot of this. But the Credit Reference Bureau says it is not the problem. The problem, it says, is that some Kenyans are unaware of their rights.
We are just the custodian of the data. The institution is the one that actually does the listing. So if you borrow from KCB, for example, it is KCB will share that information with us.
Even after getting a clearance certificate for the defaulted loan that goes for up to 2,200 shillings, it takes 5 years for their credit history to be removed from the Bureau. For some, their hope is that the government will make good its promise to remove young people aged between 18 and 35 years from the CRB list, as had been promised by the Youth Fund chairman Ronyo Sumba last year. Silas Apollo, NTV.
Across the borders, and the main opposition candidate in the Democratic Republic of Congo. to help me have that discussion next to me is Jackie Othoro, who is a life coach, among very many other things. And for purposes of this conversation, we'll work with life coach. Next to her, of course, we have Lois Mbo, who is the founder of Adira Network. And next to her is Mwanesi Musalia, who is the founder of House of Major. Thank you for making time this morning. A very vital conversation, even as we settle into the new year. Now, I'll start off with the minority in this case, which will be Mwanesi.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I know you're very passionate about this because not only have you had experience in this, but it is important that you actually are prepared to go into something and make the best out of it. And this is what you say, getting ahead in life and being the best you can. And the best way to do that, you say, most often than not, is playing to your strengths.
100%.
Talk on the same.
Sure. If you spend a lot of time doing things that you like or that you're good at, chances are you're going to become excellent at it, as opposed to spending time on things that you are rather weak and not particularly skilled at. Then you're going to spend a lot of time playing catch up, and the only resource that we actually have, Gladys, is time, and how you choose to spend that time is going to dictate your outcomes. So if you're playing to your strengths and if you're doing the things that come naturally to you, maybe it's a talent that you have, maybe it's something that you've developed over time, then you're going to stand a much better chance at excelling at those things and providing value and creating something productive for yourself, rather than trying to fix your weaknesses or trying to do things that will get you from where you were at a low point to a high point, because it takes a lot of time perfecting your weaknesses as opposed to enhancing your strengths. So I always encourage people to play to your strengths as much as possible, excel at those things. You know, it's a famous quote that I always love saying, that Bruce Lee says, "I don't fear the man who has done 10,000 kicks once, I fear the man who has done the same kick 10,000 times," because he becomes excellent at it. And then from there you get to now grow from within and you get to expand your existing potential.
Okay, now Lois, that definitely makes sense, but we're living in a time where we have a generation that's trying to do it all, you know, trying to get an extra buck here and there, and at times you find yourself spreading yourself so thin and you miss out on your strengths because all you're thinking about is the end rather than the means. So how exactly do you work on ensuring that you work on your strengths? How do you even find out what your strengths are to start with?
Okay, so let me first say you have to be intentional. That's something that a lot of people are not. So like a time like this, we begin the year, we have these dreams and goals. Most of the time they're in our heads. Now we don't put them down on paper. So because we don't put them down on paper, then we're not able to intentionally begin to do the things that would require us to achieve those goals. So how do we get intentional? So first and foremost, like when I said, and you've asked, what are your strengths? I always say there are two levels of strength. You have what you're good at naturally, that is what you're gifted at, and then there's what you're skilled at. So for example, you could be naturally a very good communicator. You speak and you always, you know, you pump up the crowd, people listen to you. But technically, you also have other technical skills that you're good at. So stuff that you've learned either in school or at work. So being able to identify those two things and then asking yourself, so now what do I want? What can I do with these two things that I have? So that's when now you begin to be intentional and say, so what do I want to achieve, say, at the end of this year? You have to write it down. What resources will I require to achieve this goal? You have to write them down. Which people do I require to support me, or what kind of support do I need to achieve these goals? You put it down. And then now how do I move from here? So those three things, being able to identify what your goal is, being able to identify what your strengths are in terms of what your areas of gifting and what your technical skills are. And in terms of areas of gifting, because you asked, how do you identify? Sometimes it's what people keep telling us. You know, people could always keep telling you, you're really good at this, but you're struggling, wondering, what am I good at? It's already there in your face, but sometimes we ignore it. So pick that and then map it down in terms of what you want to achieve, by when, put dates to it, be able to identify the resources that you require, and then be able to identify the people and the support. And I hope at some point we can talk about the stakeholders around you. Yes, so people are trying to do so many things without realizing that, I think there's a quote that says, a jack of all trades is a specialty of none, is a master of none, you know. So don't try everything. It doesn't work. Pick one. Pick one thing, pick one path, and walk with it. Because if you try everything, you're constantly cluttering your life, and so you don't master. But if you pick one path, you have the ability to specialize, master, and become really good at it.
Okay, Jackie, we're agreeing on this, but you will find most often than not, the reason why even we lose sight of what it is that we're good at is because we're looking at the next person. You know, we're very competitive, want to get there before the other guy gets there. And at times you look out and see my strengths are very similar to the next guy. So now it leaves us to who does it best. So how do you maneuver that and make sure that you don't lose yourself but still gain the best out of it?
Wow, you know, those phrases are popping into my head. The grass is greener, you know, the Joneses. You know, constantly looking at somebody else and trying to figure out how can I up one them. And unfortunately, we have created that kind of society where we say that there's only so much that's available. So the best person, the strongest, the fastest will get it. You know, so it's a whole scarcity mentality that we think if I don't get there before my neighbor, if I don't do this before my neighbor, then I'm going to lose out. So I'm going to get all the skills I need to be very fast, to be brutal, ruthless, to be sharp, to be edgy, to get there. You know, we're sitting here, three of us, you know, we speak, we coach, we teach, but there's no competition here. Why? Because we have understood who we are and we know which area that we want to work in. You know, I work primarily with single ladies over 40, you know, because that's also my demographic. So I work in that space knowing that there are things that I can give that are true to myself that also resonate with that group of older ladies working, you know, established, but are still single. And so part of finding your authentic self and your authentic voice is asking, you know, that what if question. What if I wasn't here to do this? Who would do it? What if I had nothing else to do with my life? Would I do this? What if I had all the resources available to me? Would I be in this space? Would I be working this? And that begins to narrow down your own area or speciality. A friend of mine would tell me, you need to find your signature message. And I used to wonder, what is this man all about? What, you know, your signature message. But it's that thing that you, when you speak, when you wake up in the morning before you've had your cup of coffee, it'll be the first thing that will come out of you because that's what you live and breathe. So you talk about all the time. It becomes a part of who you are. And if that is the case, and I'm not competing with Lois, I'm not competing with Monesi. You know, we each can find our path, our lane, and we're able to excel in it because it really is who we are. It's what we breathe. You know, if you press somebody who talks about, you know, dressing well, you know, those people who are image consultants. And Monesi is one of them. That's why I'm looking that direction, you know, you know, looking that direction. Yes. If you press them, they will always say something about presenting yourself well. You know, if you press me about image, I'll go, huh? You know, I'll think twice about it. I have to really have my cogs running to come out with something that makes sense. So being authentic is truly saying, what's that thing that will come out of me without any effort? And then hone that skill. Work on the strength, you know, put it down. I love what she said. Write it down. Most of us don't write. I've gone back to paper because, write things down because if we don't write it down, there's so much going on around us. It slips away, it goes. And by February, those things we wrote on January 1st are long gone. And then we have nothing but which to guide our lives or to gauge 6 months later, where have I reached? You know, in this area,
Okay, Lois has touched on the fact that it's good to know your strengths in terms of the things that come naturally to you, and of course there's the skill sets that you have gained. Now, when I see you're passionate about doing a self-analysis, you call it SWOT.
Absolutely.
Speak on the same.
Yeah, you have to. Companies do it, organizations do it. We plan extensively, and failing to plan is planning to fail. So if we put the same energy into our businesses, into our companies, into organizations, why can't we do the same for ourselves? Part of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis of yourself is also looking, it's doing an introspection and a very honest analysis of who you are, what you're good at, what you don't like, because one of the things we don't like to do, because as Jackie said, we're always comparing, is to accept that we're weak at certain things. So once you've done you've looked at what you're good at, what you're weak at, the opportunities that are around you and your threats, now you can realistically put together some goals and some objectives. One of the big issues that makes a lot of people meander and waste a lot of time competing, doing things that are out of their strengths, not confronting their comfort zones, is the lack of planning and having an objective. Goal-driven people are usually winners because you're competing against yourself. You're not looking around you at your environment and then blaming the environment for you not getting ahead. You set a goal, you set a target, and that is what every day when you wake up, you're looking at that target and saying, how close am I to this target than before? But you can't do that unless you understand what your strengths are. One of the things I always like to do is talk about this thing called vitals, which is values, interests, temperament, activities, life goals, and strengths. If you can be honest about that, then you'll be very clear. So values are like the deal breakers, the things that are absolutely central to you. It could be religion, it could be your attitude towards the opposite sex, whatever it is, whatever your core beliefs are, those are your make or break. And then your interests are the things, obviously, that you would love to do, given the opportunity, if money was not an issue, or even if you just had the bravery to just go out and do it. Your temperament, we're all not the same in terms of how long a fuse we have. So you also have to be honest about the things that will tick you off, the environment, the people that you choose to surround yourself with, because there's no need to be in an environment that is going to just piss us off all the time. You're going to get distracted, and emotionally we need to be very balanced. Your activities are things you're going to do every day, like waking up, going to work, showering, whatever it is.
Routines?
Routines, your routine activities, and then your life goals, and this is so important. If you don't have certain milestones that you want to accomplish, whether it's short, medium, or long term, you're just going to be moving around in the wind. A friend of mine says, "Mtu hivi hivi," you'll just be there. You don't have any life goals. And your strengths are things that you can do a bit of analysis. You can ask people around you, honestly, what do you think I'm good at? There's a session that we do on flow, how to achieve flow, there are three things that you can pick up to identify your strengths. Number one, if time passes and you don't feel like, time, you can look at your watch and be like, it's 4 already? Wow, I didn't even realize the time has gone, because you were so into whatever it was that you were doing. The second thing is when people around you keep telling you that, you know what, actually, you're really good at giving advice. You're really good at fashion. You're really good at this. Pay attention to those noises, because that's a third party looking in. And the third thing is when you see it done wrong, you want to fix it. You're inclined to just move towards that. That will give you an indication of what your strengths are. And once you do that SWOT, I think you'll be on your way to accomplish a lot of
but
things.
even as we talk about strengths, I think it's also prudent, as you mentioned, that you're also aware of your weaknesses. Because what might be obvious to me as a strength in someone else, they probably do not think it is, and they think they're hanging on to their weakness as what it is that they can ride with. Now, they say successful people are actually those that have accepted what they're not good at and embrace what it is that they are actually good at. Lois, how is it, or why is it important to accept that you're weak at something?
Someone once said, and they were having a conversation about entrepreneurship, and they said, they have never met someone who was a product developer, was a finance guy, was a marketer, and was a CEO of one company. And it was hilarious because when you think about entrepreneurs, for example, like that's what they're supposed to do. You start a journey and that's what you're supposed to do. But the reality is you can't be those things. Whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're in the workplace, you can't be everything. So it's important to be okay to say, I'm not all that. I'm not all a bag of chips. I am this, but I'm not this. Because guess what it does? Number one, it frees you. It frees you from trying the race of perfection. Number two, what it does, it allows you to know where to put in your investments in terms of time, in terms of energy, in terms of resources. And for me, I say, put your investments in the things that you're good at. Because you know what? If I keep investing on the things that I'm not good at, I'm going to spend twice as much the level of investment as opposed to if I invested in what I was good at. and what I would achieve would be much higher than trying to achieve on my weaknesses. The third thing it does, being able to be aware and say, I'm okay that I'm not good at this, it allows you room to bring in partnerships. It allows you the opportunities to now bring other people into your space. Because when you think you're all that, or you're trying to really work, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't work on our weaknesses, I'm just saying, let's realize that there's a level where we need to be okay to not try harder, because we weren't gifted in that area. So why stress it out? Why not get someone else who's really, really good at it and allow them to run with it? So like I said, it frees you, number one. Number two, it allows you to know where to put your investment. And number three, it gives you the opportunity to allow other people to come into your space. The other day I had a light bulb moment because I was listening to old school music. You know, the music of our days, the 80s and the 90s. And the light bulb moment was, it suddenly occurred to me that the best love ballads ever were those that were, are they called duets? Were those that were done by, you know, two musicians, two artists coming together. Yeah, collabos. And I remembered listening to a musician say they don't like doing collabos. A local Kenyan musician saying they don't like doing collabos. And I was like, okay, I can understand wanting to maintain authenticity of your brand and all that. I can get that. But there was this bad moment that I realized, but wait a minute, you don't have to be out there doing collabos with everyone, but just being strategic and intentional with who you partner with then allows you. So you can feed that into the weaknesses. I think let's give ourselves that freedom to be okay to say that I'm not good at this. I mean, I used to be very good in maths, for example.
Oh, bless your soul.
I even wanted to be an accountant.
Okay.
But guess what? I'm not an accountant anymore. I look at numbers, I understand numbers, I can have a very strategic conversation about numbers and profitability, but I will not get into the business of tabulating numbers. But if you bring numbers to me, I will question you. But why do I want to struggle to try and do everything? Let me allow her to shine. In my weakness is her area of gifting. Let me allow her to shine because it makes our work both easy.
That's actually where the term company comes from, because you can't do everything yourself. So you need company, you need people. And that's how companies grow. From entrepreneurship founders to now, I'm not good at this thing. Let someone else do the thing that I don't have the time or the interest or the gumption or the affinity for. Let someone else take care of that so that I can focus on what's important.
And can I just chime in?
Yes.
That's why, I remember when I said, write your goal and then write the resources that you require and the people that you need. Because at that point, when you're especially doing the resources and the people, then you're able to say, if my goal this year is to get to this place, then what do I require? And then you're able to say, because I'm good at this, so I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna look for Gladys to help me with this because I'm not good at it, yet I need it to get to the place that I want. But you see, you can't succeed if you don't get to that level of being intentional.
Fantastic. Now, speaking of weaknesses, and I know most people would shy away from that because they just want to be looked at from the positive side of you. But then again, just as you've tabulated, it's important to actually be aware of these things. Let's talk about temperament. The long and short of that is, you know, it can work for you or against you, depending on who you are and what it is or which business you're into. Talk about the same and being aware of your temperament.
I think when I was about my early 20s was the first time I came, you know, across that term, your temperament, finding out who you are and your makeup. And it's because, you know, you look at yourself as a family, you've grown up together, but each of you is so distinctly different. Each of you deals with situations differently. Some of you need a bit more quiet, others need, you know, people around. I say I think with my mouth open. In other words, if I have no one to talk with, my brain freezes. I need to process stuff. But you have others who go sit in a corner and just silence and a pen and paper, and then they come up with this whole thing that they've thought through. And it was part of my understanding of we're different. You know, our temperaments are part of who we are, and they dictate how we see and process life. So, you know, you have the extrovert, the introvert, and then you can have all these, you know, tests that you can get from any, you know, good life coach that can help you figure out what your expanded temperament is. And you know, once you begin to understand that, you come to a place where you now judge yourself in your space of reality, where you are engaged with life and you say, what is it about me that fits in this place? What can I bring of my temperament into this space? You know, if I'm an extrovert, which I am partly an extrovert, most of me is extroverted. If I am that kind of person, do I need to be in a place where I am quiet and I'm not talking to anybody? And I discovered when I was working in the laboratories, because my background is science, and I was sitting working in the laboratories with my face down on microscope the whole day, looking at people's body cells and looking for cancerous cells. And it was a singularly quiet, individualized, and it drove me bananas. I lasted for literally just a training period of 2 years, and then maybe one or 2 months post that. I said, I can't do this because I need to engage with people. And so it began to help me figure out, what will I do with my life? What are the areas of life that I want to be, work in? And I began to ask questions, read books, do tests, and figure out that someone like me who loves to talk, these are the kind of places that I can engage in. So one of them is acting. So I did a stint of acting. Oh yes, I did. I did musicals, I did local theater. And then after that I said, well, I don't have the time and the patience to be rehearsing and all that. I still love to watch plays. But then someone else told me, well, if you love to talk, you're a good salesperson. I tried that and I bombed. Because I don't like convincing people to buy what they don't want. Yeah. So it was a lot of trial and error. And then I finally came into the ministry, because the other part of my life is that I'm a pastor. Yeah. And I found that talking to people was where my sweet spot was. So I can spend the whole day talking to people, and I can help them, through their journey of life, through their struggles, having a conversation with someone, and it feeds my extroverted part of me. So you need to understand, what is it? Try different things when you're younger. It gets a bit harder when you're older to keep shifting and changing. But when you're younger, try the different things that work with your personality, with your temperament. But Gladys, let me say this as well. What I also discovered is that as you grow older and as you hone yourself, some of these things that are so vibrant about you, for example, I was a bouncing off the walls kind of extrovert, just everywhere. But as I've grown older, I've calmed down. I need those spaces of quiet to go back and fill up, my cells, to recharge. I need to go to places where I'm having conversations with people that speak into me, and I'm the one listening. I'm not the one talking. So you've got to learn to come to a place of balance where you say, yes, this is who I am. I'm an introvert. I like quiet. I like to be on my own. But a point comes where you need people. You get to hear a lot more about who you are, where you're going, when you interact with somebody else. There's that famous phrase, no man is an island. We all need each other. So much as your temperament can lead and guide, it cannot be that permanent rubber stamp on your life that I'm an extrovert and I'll always be an extrovert and I'll die an extrovert, so please take me as I am. I'm melancholic. The cloud rests above my head. So deal with my moods. We can't live in those spaces because we are interactive. We work with other people. And when you come into the workplace, it's very easy to label people, oh, that person is a melancholic. They will never get anything done. They're perfectionists. They will not move until the last T is dotted. And then we begin to label people and put people in boxes. And I think we lose out when we do that, because the richness of a person is not just one term. It's not one label. We are a mix.
All right. Can I chime in?
Before we take a break?
Quick one.
Yes.
Temperament is something very interesting. So I run our program, the Dira Network, just helping women at the workplace to find their seat at leadership. And one of the interesting conversations we have is we're coming from a generation where there's a lot of women empowerment speak, for example. And so especially younger women want to be able to voice their opinions, because we're now liberated, and to be able to say, this is who I am and listen to me. But one of the things that I keep saying is, with temperaments, there has to be a level of wisdom. And that's why we say, for example, we want to be confident, bold, and wise. That's what we say at Adira. But why wisdom? Because, like you've said properly, it's one thing to say, I'm this. But it's another to know when to use it and when not to use it. So, for example, you may be highly opinionated and you always feel you want to chime in. But guess what? You don't have to attend every argument. you're invited in. Some you just sit them out. That's where wisdom comes in. So you know that, yes, I'm a sanguine. I'm always chatty, but find the wisdom to know when to use it and when to sit it out. Because then if you're able to choose those spaces deliberately, then you will use your temperaments for your strength and not for your downfall.
Okay. Yeah. And Monese, before we take this short break, I'll bring you into this conversation because most people listening to temperaments, they would say, oh, that sounds very woman speak. But this is something that is also, it's human. It applies for both sexes. How has the wisdom of knowing your temperament worked for you?
It's directly linked to emotional intelligence. That's a buzzword now. Everybody's using the word emotional intelligence. But sincerely, it allows you to, like Lois said, to understand to look at your environment and decide, do I need to engage in this or do I not need to engage in this? Knowing who I am first and foremost will allow me to see whether I'm going to be adding value or taking value, because that's really what it's about. If you want to be successful, if you want to accomplish anything, it's usually a question of, is what I'm going to do, is what I'm going to say, is what I'm going to move, going to create or take steps to creating value, or is it going to take steps in reducing value? And value is a subjective thing. It's what am I choosing to do now that will increase my my potential for money, for career, for love, for whatever it is, vis-a-vis taking that away. So once you have that emotional intelligence to understand that this is who I am, I get stressed by certain situations, certain people do not do it for me, certain environments do not do it for me, then you can make conscious, deliberate steps to either avoid or contribute. And that's the wisdom I think she was referring to.
Fantastic. Well put, Monese Musalia, even as we have this conversation this morning about getting ahead. Jackie Othoro, Lois Mbo. After we come back from the short break, let's talk about maintaining your authenticity. There's a lot out there that you can do, but not everything is for you. And at times when we delve into too much, we lose ourselves, which in itself is a beginning to an end. So how do we make sure this does not happen? Stay with us. Well, it's the 9th day of 2019. My name is Gladys Gachanja and we're settling into the new year on AM Live. We're having that conversation about getting ahead even as we embrace this new year. Things we need to take up, things we need to shed off so that we can be the best people in the new year. Now, great conversation earlier on, even as we engage Manesi Musale, who is a founder House of Major, Jackie Othoro, who is a life coach, and Lois Moore, who is a founder at Adira Network. And we said when we come back, we'll talk about being authentic, because this is the other thing that most people do not understand and really get that it actually is a compass as to where it is that they will end up to. And again, I'll start with you, Musalia. How exactly do you get ahead without losing yourself?
The one person you can't lie to is yourself. So, you know, going back to the strengths SWOT discussion, once you've done that and you've been very honest about it and you've done maybe a little bit of an analysis around you, there are certain ways of getting authenticity in some of the sessions that we coach, and defining your image. So as an image consultant, there are 4 stages of seeing your authentic self. The first is the mirror image. What do you think other people think of you subjectively in your own space? It's a hypothetical question that you ask. I think people think I'm nice. I think people think I'm smart. I think people think I'm talented in this. I think whatever. Then the second stage is to actually go and confirm that hypothesis. So you can have your own hypothesis, and I love that. I love listing, putting things down. So you list, I think this is what people think of me. Then you go out into the market and you actually test that hypothesis. Start with friends and ask them to be as honest and brutal as possible. You know, what do you think of me in this? What do you think of me in this? Do you think in terms of my speaking, my dressing, my talking, whatever it is that you want to check out for yourself, go do that actual analysis with the people around you, and then spread it out. Ask random strangers, you know, people who maybe have met you once, acquaintances, whatever. Then once you've tabulated that information, come back and ask yourself, okay, what do I want people to think of me? What do I want people to say? What am I comfortable in my own skin? When you compare the 2 lists, what I thought people thought about me and what I actually found out people think about me, are there areas of synergy? Do these things actually match? And do I like them? Am I comfortable with them? And so that third element is your wish, your desire. What do I want the world to think of me? And then the 4th stage now, once you've done all of those stages, is to now package yourself accordingly, which for me is called the corporate image. This is now putting yourself out there, speaking a certain way, talking a certain way, dressing a certain way, behaving in a particular manner. And you'll find that, I mean, you know, right now I think the whole world is going through this phase of exhaling, and it's like we're tired of Obama, we're tired of, you know, good manners and people who are, you know, we just need to just release. We need a Trump. We need this, you know. And people like that are playing to their authentic strengths. You know, if you want to make an impact, I believe, be as authentic to yourself as possible, because people can sense when you're faking it. I love, you know, there's this adage, fake it till you make it.
Yes.
And you can fake it as much as possible, but there's only so much,
that's right,
you know, cover up that you can do.
Yeah.
People will eventually go through to the real. And if you start with the real from the beginning and then only enhance, so don't transform everything. Once you've done your hypothetical, you've gone out, you've checked out what people are actually saying about you, and you've decided, okay, you know what, I love these things that people are saying about me. This I wish I could change. This I'm not going to focus on too much. Let me just do me, and now let me do me but enhance it. Let me add a little bit of makeup. Let me add a little bit of this. Let me not transform completely, because people will be able to sense, and it's very difficult and expensive to sustain fake. You know, a time will come where you just want to, you know, let loose. So there's no need in faking it.
Okay, Lois, it's important what Manesi is saying, but it's also very important to draw the line, because when you've gone asking and people have an idea of what you are or giving you feedback, you could easily get lost in what people want you to be or think of you vis-a-vis what exactly you are. So how do you ensure that you draw the line by still playing to your strengths and your authenticity?
I think I would say being able to answer the question why. What's your why? See, a lot of us want money. I mean, want to be millionaires, yes, but why? So if you're able to answer, why do I want this? So there's And it's good. Start with what are people saying, what do I want to be, and what do I want people to say, but then come back to why. So why do you want success? Why do you want to be successful? When you can be able to answer that question, it helps you understand who you really are and why you're doing what you're doing. And that's where I believe authenticity comes from. It comes from the question of why. So that, for example, we may all want $1 million, for example. It could be our goal at the end of the year. But the why is very different. I may want $1 million because I grew up, for example, in a very poor home. We never had proper meals. So I don't ever want to go back to that place where I can't feed myself. She may want $1 million because they grew up very wealthy, but the parents were probably mean and didn't allow them the joys of the money. You may want your $1 million for various reasons. So you see, the why is what will tell you why you want this thing.
Or even how far you can go.
And how far you can go. So your why becomes your motivator. And your why, again, determines your values. Because authenticity, you can't separate authenticity and values. You can't. So once you're able to understand your why, then you're able to say, I want this because of this. And therefore, this is how far I am willing to go. A lot of the people who struggle with, and I'm going to use this word very delicately, who struggle with faking it till they make it, is because they want something so bad. But if you ever ask them why, sometimes they're not able to answer that question. It's because of the Johnson syndrome. It's because there's a rat race. So you see, being able to understand why enables you to know even how far you will go, how much investment you will put, what you will take in and what you will not take in. And that's where authenticity comes in, because then you're able to say, this is me, and I'm okay with this amount of success, or I'm okay with having this job, or I'm okay with doing this, but I won't go this far because I'm very clear on what my why is. But when you're not clear on your why, then you will run around, you will race around, and you will try to embrace everything. Yeah.
Okay, now Jackie, definitely, even as much as you would want to be very authentic and following what Lois is saying, the dynamics of life have changed with time, and we're living at a time where social media is the key for most people. You switch on Instagram, go to Twitter and what have you, and you see certain trends and you feel like you're missing out. So you keep reevaluating and moving away from the core of who you are. Speak on that.
I don't know if I'm the right person to speak on that, because I am not moved by social media. I'm not that generation, you know. I use it to my value and benefit. But, you know, we hear the stories of people who build up a life in a world on social media. So what you see, you think that's who you're going to meet when you meet them. But when you actually finally get to meet them, they've created a world that is not who they are. And it is dangerous. I think we all know that, you know, because it will come crashing down. It is not who you are. It is somebody else's life. And unfortunately, we have people who have made a living on social media portraying a particular kind of lifestyle. This is what a young lady in her 20s or 30s should be, should look like, should have. And so you're striving to be someone else because you're looking at an image, not the real person. And, you know, and I think when we are trying to be what we see in the public arena, you know, when we're trying to be like, you know, who our leaders are, you know, trying to do things the way we see our politicians do it because we think that's what makes us who we truly are as Kenyans, we're losing a part of who we are. We are getting lost in all that madness. And, you know, and I think everybody at some level goes through a process of, you know, self-introspection, trying to figure out, who am I? Who is the real me, you know? And I went through it, if I should give in a bit of my own story, about as I was getting into my 40s and asking the question, what do I have? What have I done? What have I accomplished? You know, if I was to put down my asset list, you know, would it show that, yeah, she's done something with her life at 40 years. And I went through a crisis moment, because what I thought when I was in my 20s that I should have become by my 40s wasn't on that list. And I began to ask some very hard questions about myself. But what I also found out is that I had lost the ability to speak, to articulate things. I literally lost my voice. You know, so I sat there and just watched life happen around me without engaging in life. And if I was to have that conversation with me, then I'd know that that wasn't who I really was. If I went into that committee in my head and we sat down and said, Jackie, so who are you? What are you? And why are you behaving like this? Because you know this is not you. And when I finally came to myself, I really realized that I'd lost the ability to speak out and to be who I authentically was. And it led me on a journey of introspection, which is a really hard thing for a sanguine extrovert. But I had to do something to get back to the real me. And it's interesting, we've talked a lot about values, because I finally came up with this acronym, Finding Your Voice, you know, to get me back to the place where I can be authentically me, not what everybody else in my life expects me to be. And the V simply stands for your value system. It's critical. They've both said it. If you don't have a basic core belief system, then you will be tossed about by the wind. You will be one day like this, the next day like this. Somebody else comes with another value system and you'll take theirs, as opposed to finding out what is the one thing I will not change about who I am. What is so important for me that I will, excuse me, stick with it. And then the O is what occupies my time. What do I love to spend time doing? You know, so I'm a scientist by training. I'm a pastor now by vocation, but I love to spend time in the kitchen to cook. And I can whip up a really good meal. One day I'll invite all of you guys.
Looking forward.
You know, but what occupies me, what gives me joy when I spend time doing it? And then begin to increase doing those things. It may be very different from what you're employed to do. It may be very different from what you're trained to do. But if you spend some time doing that, even 15, 20 minutes, an hour a day, it just adds to your bucket because it fills you with joy. And then the I is your intellect. What do you spend time thinking about? You know, are you pushing your mind forward? Are you reading? Are you keeping informed? Are you engaging with people? And then the C is, what is your calling? What is your purpose? And that's one of the big buzzwords among life coaches. We help people find their purpose. We help them discover, you know, when I wake up in the morning, I am so excited to face my day because I have found what I was called or made to do. And then finally, E, your experiences. You know, and many times as people, we tend to run away from our bad experiences. But yet a bad experience can help you learn how, one, not to do something the same way again, you know, how to do it better the next time. So I say, look at your bad experiences and let them be a stepping stone, a learning platform to future. But then we also have good experiences, you know, and many times we are shy to really talk about our good experiences, what we're good at, what we did well. But keep those at the forefront because they will give you the fuel to, you know, to go and do it better. So when I sat through that and I took myself through finding my voice, it made me make some amazing changes. I quit my job where I was, you know, took a break for 2 years, then was ready to re-engage at a place where now I was able to speak, you know, what was true for me, you know, ask what was true for me, expect from people around me what was authentic to me. And then I was also able to give to people the real Jackie. You know, no hiding, no trying to be so polished, you know, and walking around, you know, really put together.
Yeah.
You know, but really coming and giving the authentic Jackie, and what you saw is what you got, you know. Someone once said to me after that you're a woman with no guile. I said, oh, finally. You know, I can be honest and, you know, about who I am, and people can appreciate that about me. So for me, the program that I run is to help women and men, to help, you know, singles and children find their voice. And the sooner you find it, the more authentic you can live your life, as opposed to living a life that somebody else has fashioned for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting that she says she took a 2-year break to just relook her life. Most would say, so what am I doing in 2 years? Who's paying the bills? How am I going to survive this? This does not even sound fathomable, yeah? Right. But for you, Monesi, when you think about it, it is important to actually take a step back, relook, then engage again. How critical is this, and how can you go about it without losing everything else, so to speak?
I think I've mentioned this in previous forums, is taking quiet time to really just talk to yourself. And I think that's why, from a spiritual perspective, and probably Jackie might resonate with this, prayer is that moment, that quiet time that you take for yourself. And if you look at a lot of successful leaders, people who are winning and doing big things, if you evaluate them, they actually have moments in their day, not just, it doesn't have to be a big gap, a huge sabbatical. And I think the reason why a lot of people are doing that huge, big thing now is because we spend so much time being entertained, being driven by deadlines, being consumed by the people around us, that we never take time to actually just stop, switch everything off, and keep coming back to what is my why, what is my goal, am I closer to achieving these things, and so on and so forth. So I would say give yourself moments of pause as frequently as possible to introspect. The world that we have now is, we're bombarded with information everywhere. There's information and there's things to do, and we're busy. And if you can take the time to just pause, then you're able to articulate. So it stops being a committee and it becomes, you and maybe one other voice, and if it's got better. So now you can have that conversation with yourself on a regular, and keep telling yourself, okay, you know what, this morning I was able to achieve this. In the evening, did I accomplish what I set out to achieve in the morning? And you set yourself those mini milestones, medium milestones, long-term milestones. But if you don't take the time off to switch everything off, to stop, you can call it meditation, you can call it prayer, whatever works for you. Just switch everyone and everything off to keep having those regular conversations with yourself. That way, you'll be able to quickly find out, are you on the right track or not on the right track? You don't need this huge long break because, like you're saying, life happens. The landlord is not going to wait for you to say, I'm introspecting. I'm now, just hold on with the rent. I'm finding myself. He doesn't care about that. The kids don't care about that. School fees, all of these things. Life needs to happen. But the more we get into a habit of pausing and taking quiet time out, and I've learned this from some of the leaders that have been around. They take their me time so seriously because that's the time where you now get to strategize internally. You're competing against yourself. You're looking at who are you, what are you about. But if you're constantly driven by your environment, you're moving because your boss said so, because your kid said so, because your wife or your husband or whoever, and you're being your life is happening to you instead of you happening to life, then you'll always be playing catch up. And then now you need this long break to now rethink and whatever. Whereas you can just do it periodically. If daily is a long thing, maybe once every 2 days. Switch off, switch everything off. And so even from my own experience, when I about 9-10 years ago, when I realized how important that was, and part of my value system is I have to pause 5 times a day to take that quiet time. You can call it prayer, but after praying, you have to think now. Am I on the right track? Am I accomplishing what once I got into that routine, my goodness, it's been,
Okay. Maybe I could speak into that 2-year gap, because it can cause a bit of confusion. You just sat around, how much money did you have? That for 2 years you could take care of yourself. But as humans, we are 3 parts. We are a 3-part being. We are a spirit being. We have a soul, which is our mind, our will, and emotions, and we have a physical body. We live in a physical body. And for me, I needed to shift something in my soulish realm, in my thinking, in my emotions, in the things that I was doing in the soulish realm. And so for those 2 years, I did quit my job, yes, and it was a pastoral job. And I went and I did completely something different. So I was occupied, but with a completely different mindset from what I was doing. So I actually went into business for 2 years. I was part of a group of people that run events. So I said, okay, it's my turn to take over. You guys have been holding fort. Let me do it for the 2 years. And what it did is it gave me that moment to pull away from what I was called to do, to get that reflective time, but to be busy engaging my mind in a very different, place, in a very different area of gifting, of experience, of work. And so obviously my bills were still getting paid because I was getting an income. But what it did for me is that it helped me see life from the side of a congregant. Because, we're pastors, and someone comes to me and says, Pastor Jackie, pray for me because, business is really tough, and my vendors are not paying, my clients are not paying, and it's tough. And, Pastor goes, say, come, let us pray. but then there's no maybe very practical thing following through. As you said, you got to do something. But it gave me an insight into what they face when they're out there, and you're hustling for a job, and you're putting a presentation out, you're doing the work. And it allowed me, when I now came back into being a pastor, into ministry, that I was able to see things differently. I was able to experience, because I've stepped in their shoes for 2 years, I was able to experience their life and their everyday grind, the children and school fees, getting to work, driving to work, rush hour, trying to get to where you need to go, seeing a client in the middle of the night because that's when they're free, so all that kind of things, it helped me understand another demographic. But the important thing is, when you're taking that break, it's got to be an active break. It's not sitting, at the beach sipping some long drink, even though that could be helpful, but it's got to be active. Your mind's got to keep thinking, processing. Yes, I've taken a break, but where am I going to once I'm out of this break? Even if it's 5 minutes, you've got to know what the next minutes is going to be. If it's 1 year, what's the next year going to look like? We take sabbaticals of 7 years. Someone goes off to the mountains, but you can't live there forever. You've got to come back down off the mountain. What's that going to look like? So you've got to be strategic about it. We're not advocating foolishness, because we've got to live. But be strategic and have a plan. That plan is critical.
Fantastic. Now, Lois, let's talk about authenticity versus selfishness, because some would look at you and think, come on, what cloud is this that you're living in? And you probably will get backlash, because when you stand for your core values, there are people who would not understand, and maybe even those that you would like to do business with or you work with. So how do you tread that carefully, making sure you don't lose yourself, but also don't come off as aloof?
So someone once said, you can lie flat like an envelope, and they will still complain you're not flat enough. And that means that there will always be people, regardless of what you do or say, that just won't get you. It's a reality. And sometimes it has nothing to do with you. It's just that everyone is wired differently. Okay? So there's also people who, and I'm saying this very deliberately, when people sometimes are against you, it's not because of you as a person, but it is because you reflect things that they have been unable to achieve or process. So they're reflecting their inefficiencies on you. It's not your fault. It's just how it is, for example, okay? So be able to understand that even if I lie flat, not everyone will say I'm flat enough. The people will still complain. So what does that mean? Do you? Do you? Because this is the thing. If you don't do you, A, you're cheating yourself. B, you're not gonna last. It's a lot of work not to do you. So you're gonna be constantly struggling. And I'll give an example. At some point I changed jobs, and so there was this place where I worked, and it was interesting because I would meet people and they would be like, oh, Lois Mbo, you're the one. And, people would be like, don't talk to her. How do you talk to her? It's like people used to put me at arm's length. And I never used to get it. I used to wonder why, but I'm just a human being. Like people would really put me somewhere, and I would try to be, I'm just the same me. Now, ironically, I did quite a lot of work in that organization. Then when I left, I joined public service. And you know how when you go to public, it's a fantastic place, by the way, but you go there and you're prepped and you're told, you gotta be careful. So I go there, and because I really want to impress, I begin to listen to what people are saying. I begin to get involved with what's happening. And I'm constantly trying to explain myself, and I have these projects and assignments, and I want to get buy-in. And there's a phase about to where I spent energy trying to get it, and half of it didn't have to do anything with me. Now, guess what my light bulb moment was? I realized in my previous job, one of the reasons why I had been extremely successful was because I had learned to block the din, which is the noise that everyone says. So I had learned to be me. So I'd come to the office, I'd be very clear on what my goals are, very professional, objectively read them. Yes, gather feedback here, but not get swamped in. So you can lie flat, like an envelope, but not every people will still complain. So do you, as long as your why is very clear and it is authentic and it is objective and you carry out your why then with a level of professionalism, then you're good to go. Otherwise, you're going to spend energies listening to Dean, trying to react to the Dean, and you end up a very frustrated person.
Okay, Manessa, speak to how important what she's saying is to your personal brand at the end of the day, because we are all unique. We all are different brands to the next person or from the next person. How do you now tie those two?
And can I,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yes. I know it's bad manners. Let me just chime in because there's something I wanted to say.
Yes.
And then
oh, yes. I know. The light bulbs are many.
So, yeah, and then you ask, so how does that work for you, for example? And then you continue. So you see, when you've then been able to set yourself apart and said, this is my why, and so these are my values, and you begin to live your value, this is what happens. The world around you begins to listen. And the world around you begins to listen, then they change the way they interact with you. So for example, like when I was in employment, people knew, even now, people know what my values are. So there are certain things people would not bring to my table. That's right. You gotta think before you go to her table because there's stuff that you will take. So what I can tell you for a fact, and with humility, I want you to do this because I do corporate training, for example. It's a conversation where even when we are negotiating on price, we don't negotiate on price because there's already a value. You understand?
Yes.
So, and if you feel it's just being able to say, but this is who I am, and that's
Knowing
why
your
you
value.
came to me.
Yeah.
So we can discuss a discount, but we cannot discuss the price value of the service, because when you came to me, you knew the value. There's a reason why you didn't go to someone else. So that someone else may think it's pride, but guess what? It's the brand you've created consistently, authentically, because there's a promise you give at the end of the day. I used to manage a basketball team, and even when we go to the locker room, it was a men's team, and even when we go to the locker room, when we've lost or when we've won, I would make noise because I would say, if you're, let's say, number 3 in rankings, or number 4, position 4 in the rankings for Premier League, the Basketball Premier League, and then we were playing with a team that's, let's say, number 10, and then we won them by 1 basket. What's that? I mean, guys, are we a serious team? It's not about our pink sheet. It's not about winning, but how did we win? We must be authentic to who we are and our play. So you can't. You can't. If you're number 3, there's a
and your value for you to actually create the brand that you want to be.
And the brand is the impact that you have on the environment, on the people around you. The age-old saying, Jeff Bezos, a brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. When you've left, what are people saying? How are they behaving? How are they reacting to what you've just done? If we speak about any famous person now, their brand is here. It's living here. It's doing something for them. So everywhere that you go, how are you impacting the people around you? How are you impacting their psyche? What are you leaving them with? And many of us, because we're so focused on listening to what other people are doing, listening to the noise, like she's saying, competing with others, whatever, we're not deliberate and intentional, as Lois said, in making sure that we impact life instead of life impacting us. And people who build strong brands are those who are very, very deliberate that by the time I've left here, I need to have left you with something. I need to have left a mark, because that's what a brand is. It's a mark. And if you're not intentional about leaving a mark, it could be a good mark, a bad mark, whatever. As long as you're, for me, it's be phenomenal or be forgotten. All right. And if you're not remembered, if you're not top of mind, then then there's nothing that you're going to be able to do of value with those people. You have to keep reintroducing yourself, and it's a promise. And so if you do you, number one, like I said right at the very beginning, you will be able to perfect certain things because you're doing you. You're doing the things that you're good at, that are true to you. You will perfect them. And as you perfect them, you develop excellence. And excellence is you're able to leave the wow factor. You look at Beyonce, Tiger Woods, Lewis Hamilton, all of these people. They started doing what they were doing at a very young age, so that by the time they've gotten to their 20s, they've had like 16, 17 years of doing the same thing to the point where it's now excellent. So that by the time Serena Williams or any of these people are stepping onto the court or whatever it is, all they're doing is they're expressing excellence, and they're able to leave a much bigger mark than someone who has done maybe a year of training and now they're coming to do it, you know. So there's the time factor, but also understanding that you will not be for everybody. You know, whoever your brand will not resonate with everybody. But there will always be someone for you. So if you are conscious about doing you, knock on 10 doors, two might open. Focus on those 2. The world is a huge place. It's a huge, huge place. I tell my clients all the time, you know, we're 7 billion odd. You just keep doing you. Your squad, your people will rally around you based on what you are bringing to the table. You don't have to do what so-and-so is doing, but you keep doing you enough and keep putting yourself out there. And this is the other thing, and it comes with confidence. You can't build a brand if you're not confident. And confidence comes from looking at yourself and being comfortable with, okay, this is who I am as Gladys. This is what I'm good at. So this is what I will put out to the world. And if you're not seen and heard, you don't exist. Perhaps that's why social media is now such a big thing. If people don't see and hear you enough, then you don't exist. And if you don't create that reputation either by the work that you do or by people seeing and hearing you enough, then it's very difficult to build a brand. So you have to combine what Lois said, doing you, and putting yourself out there, playing to your strengths. Jackie is I love that, making sure that you understand, you know, this is what I love to do. I love this VOICE acronym, by the way. This is fantastic. Your values, the stuff that occupies you. But people need to see that. If they don't see it, they don't hear it, then you stay in your room and just shine bright like a diamond, but you're going to shine for yourself.
Yeah, no impact whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, now we have built a brand. You've gotten to a point where you understand who you are true to your core values. But they say for you to stay on your A game, number one, you've got to be consistent.
100%.
You've got to be consistent. And by that is now realizing that as much as you've got the power within to propel yourself to greatness, you also need people around you to actually now kind of fortify what it is that you'd like to do so that you stay on. So Jackie, speak on the same and the importance of doing that and how it can work for different people. We're talking about married women in corporate, single people, men. I mean, it doesn't matter who. How do you take advantage of this?
Let me begin by first saying, you know, something that I think both have mentioned, particularly what you said about the people that we go to see, people that we go and look at, you know, the musicians, the athletes, the sportsmen and women, the business people. One of the things that we're actually going to see is not necessarily Serena Williams' skill at tennis, you know. It's not necessarily some musician's skill, you know, in singing. We're actually going to watch their discipline. Because they have spent hours, disciplined hours, preparing for that stage. You know, and many times we are not as disciplined. So we will pay the money to go to the stadium. I know some people who will pay money to plane and go and watch a Manchester match in England. Is it Twickenham? Is that where they play? No, Trafford, Old Trafford. Yeah. As you can tell, I don't watch.
Well, the latest for the Hope
Yes, that one. You know, so you can tell how far back I am. But they will go. Why? Because the excellence that they see on that field is hours of discipline. You know, we don't go to watch an undisciplined team playing. You know, that one who's number 15 on the chart. You know, you're not going to go watch Indiscipline where they're running, hitting each other. I saw a football team where they turned on each other and they began fighting each other. That's Indiscipline. We don't want to see that. And so part of what we, you know, in this journey of actually gathering people around us, helping us on this inward journey, becoming an outward expression, is the discipline factor. Serena Williams, her father was on the court with her and her sister Venus from the time they were children. They didn't have a social life. They didn't have sleepovers. They didn't have days at the mall. They were on the court. But their father was very key to helping them maintain that discipline. Because when you're younger, you know, you will fall off. You know, give me a chance as a young girl to go play with my other girlfriends. I will take that over spending hours at the piano practicing. So you've got to have a network of people around you who support where you're going. And it doesn't matter whether you're a child or whether you're a grown-up. It's been said that if you want to know who I am, look at the 5 people I hang out with. You know, are they driven people? Are they focused? You know, someone says, if I'm the smartest one in that group, if I'm the most advanced in that group, I need to find 5 others. you know, that will keep moving me forward, because discipline is not static. You know, you've got to change as you go. As you find another, you know, maybe a barrier, you've got to develop another discipline of skill to get you over that particular barrier. And maybe at that point, the resources of people that you need, you know, the finances will be there to help you. I really believe that this journey, we cannot walk it alone. You cannot be successful alone. There's always somebody around you who wants the best for you. Locate those people. You know, look for them. There are those who are the haters who want to pull you down. You know, you don't need to spend time with those ones. And maybe once or twice they will creep into your circle of influence, but recognize who they are. You know, love them for who they are, but let them go. Surround yourself with people that bring out the best in you, that challenge you to keep going forward. Sometimes, you know, like right now, I hear my mother's voice in my ear a lot more. And I appreciate that voice. You know, when I was younger, I didn't want my parents', you know, advice. Is like, no, I can do it. You know, I'm independent. But now I appreciate when I hear that voice, and I remember she used to say this, and my father would say this, or some teacher said that. Those voices, you know, they come back and they make sense now. So I think we're on a journey of listening. You know, there's somebody always speaking around us. You know, I'm a believer, and I believe that God is always speaking. So my time of prayer is important because I hear that voice. But then the people around us are constantly speaking. What are we hearing? What are our ears tuned into? Are we tuned into the fact that, you know, oh, you can't begin a business in Kenya right now because the economy is really tanking? Or are you saying, I've got something that Kenyans need. This is the perfect time for me to get started. So part of our coming out, being known, having a brand that is strong, is surrounding yourself with people that speak life, you know, into you.
Lois, we're living in a generation where we are propelled by the number of likes we get on our social media pages, and we feel we've made it. For some, it translates to actually business for social enterprises and what have you. But in as far as looking within is concerned, how important is it for you to look beyond the likes and beyond the smiles and realize those that are there to stay, those that are there to teach you something, and others that are there to remind you of something?
Okay, so I go back to the why. Remember the why. Why are you doing this? And the why then will tell you. If my why is likes, then that's where my energies will be at. But see, there's something else over and above likes. I want to believe that everyone wants impact of some sort. So if you want impact, then it's gotta be beyond the likes. And how then do you ensure that you keep off? It's good to have the likes. They take you to a certain place, but they will not sustain you. And that's the thing, you know, because even when you get them, you get the business, for example, but if you don't deliver on the business with quality and excellence, then you won't get the next business. You get, so likes can only get you to a certain place. So the question is back to the why, and then how then do you go over and above the likes, and you create a resource of people around you, like you were asking. So what kind of people do you bring to the table? So let me start with mentors. It's a word we threw, but you need 3 kinds of mentors. People who can help you to be solid. And what are these 3 mentors? A, you need a peer mentor. Someone who's at your level, someone who is probably doing the same thing that you're doing or something different, but at your level, either in terms of age or where you are at. So this is someone who you're able to have real conversations. They become your go-to person when you need to ask for something. Then you need someone who's, of course, above you. And this is someone you also go for advice because of their years of experience, their expertise, they're able to and keep you grounded. And then you need someone who, I'm trying to find a better word. Let me say someone who's younger than you. I will not use the word below. Let me just use below in quotes. In the sense that they could be younger than you in terms of age, even in terms of experience. But why do you need them? Because they always give you a different worldview. I have interesting conversations with my younger sister because the program I run is for young women at the workplace, 26 to 35, and she's in that age bracket. Now, I'm over that age bracket, and because of who I am, my personality, and my experiences, there's a way I speak, there's a way I see the worldview. There's certain principles that I'm always trying to insist, and every once in a while, like yesterday, she had to remind me, no, you can't dress like that, no, you need to change this and this, because you're targeting us. So you see, I need someone like that to constantly remind me to of who I'm targeting and how, if I can't change my language speak, then can I bring someone else on board who can speak to them in a way they understand? So you need that kind of person. Now, the other kind of person that you need so that you are authentic and you don't get carried away is the kind of person who, they don't have to fall in this category of the 3 mentors that I've talked about, but is a person who is real. You know those people go to and they whip you off your face. And a lot of times we fear those kinds of people. But those are the people who are phenomenal. Those are the people who can catalyze our success and growth. They're the kind of people that you have to plan, you have to mentally prepare yourself.
Because they'll give you the raw truth.
As it is. But you must have, even if it is one, you must have such a person in your life. Because if you don't have, then you constantly live on a pedestal of yourself and the likes, which doesn't help you. But this person is able to ground you and tell you, by the way, this is rubbish. This is, you know, they can ground you. And then the fifth person now you need is the kind of person that you can go to when you want to be babied. And we all, I know even men, we all get to that space.
No judgment.
Yes,
where there's no judgment.
Spaces where I just want to be taken, like, you know, right now we're seated here looking pretty and we have brands and we're serious people, but the reality is we have our moments. There are days when we're not all put up together. So you need that person, because if you don't have that person, then you will struggle to be put up 24/7, which is a job. This is a job. So you need that person who you can go and just be silly lawyers and be stupid lawyers, and they will accept you because they help you decompress, they help you come back to who you are, they help you connect with not the brand lawyers, but you know, the girl behind lawyers, the dude behind Mwenesi, they help you connect, and so that gives you the balance, and then it helps you therefore live beyond the likes. Yes,
very well put. Now, Mwenesi, I know you've spoken on this, and especially to the women. And it's important that you understand how you can take advantage of the power within and without. Speak on the same.
You know, I can't speak as a woman.
Definitely
but,
not.
Yeah, definitely not. But every time I think of the fact that there is the possibility of life within women. It's not within us. We contribute.
Yes.
But within women, there's the possibility of life. That to me means that the potential for the world is really at the feet of women, and so whenever there's this sense that that women need to rise up and challenge and whatever, if there was a way, and your network and similar networks are things that I would love to get involved in, of understanding that because we bring life as women into the world, we have that capacity, then ideally, we call the shots. It's not Father Nature.
It's Mother Nature.
It's Mother Nature. If she's like, okay, well, you know what, I'm done now. Tsunami, everybody. That's it. It's over. And you know, the fact that I think, you know, society has evolved patriarchally so that women being nurturers are supposed to stay at home and take care of the family and whatever, and men are supposed to go out and hunt. And now that we have technology and the advent of information and so on, so that, you know, hunting is now not a male-only exercise. Nurturing, again, now is not a woman-only exercise. So there are these overlaps of sameness. However, if you bring the nurturing into the hunting space, if you bring those values, those strengths, the ability to be aware and to be able to do several things at once into the hunting space, what that does now is you immediately have an advantage. I think and I've been reading a bit of literature on this, is that men are creatures of ego and women are creatures of emotion. And unfortunately, when our ego takes over as men, then we stop thinking rationally. When emotions take over as women, then you stop thinking rationally. And if we can accept that and temper it, you know, then we can start to harness our natural strengths. And so as women, that ability to bring life, to look at things holistically, if you bring that now into so quote unquote man's world, and you're able to take advantage of that, that's when you see the women leaders that we have now dominating and really having the staying power. That's what I've realized is most women who are able to take advantage of their power have much longer staying power than the men. You'll see a man will last in a CEO's job 1-2 years and then he's on to the next. But women can really push on and make the most of their abilities. So for me, that simple fact that you can bring life into the world means that you have immense power. You can control everything. It's just that maybe perhaps because of that ability to look at everything at the same time, whereas men, because we're one-track minded and we're very singular, this is what I want to do, maybe we are able to achieve our targets much quicker. The power of women lies within you being able to know who you are and the values that you're bringing, but also bringing on board others as well. Men don't work well with other men. Yeah, we compete with men, but women have the ability to bring others into that mix, and that collective spirit, I think, is something that I think going forward women need to really take advantage of.
All right, now we are winding down on this very important conversation, and Lois, even as we do so, speak on the importance or having the ability to influence those around you and building coalitions. And by this I mean being realistic, that as much as you're a brand, as much as you're a powerhouse, you need people around you to actually come to your defense when it calls for it, for people to come in when the nanny is missing, for those that are mothers. I mean, people who just prop you and keep you going.
Remember, we keep talking about people. So this is the thing. Decisions about your success are made and are always made in your absence. Did you know that?
Yes.
That decisions about your success and growth are almost 90% always made in your absence. What do I mean? Let's talk corporate, for example, all right? If it's at the workplace, you don't get promoted because we call you into the boardroom and then we ask you, we want to promote you, what do you think? Defend yourself. No, 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 no. We sit in a boardroom somewhere and we start having conversations, and your boss comes and says, I have this list, I think I want to promote Jackie. And then Wenesi will say, which Jackie? No, but Jackie, da-da-da-da-da-da, okay? So this is the thing. If you don't become intentional about creating mutually benefiting relationships with your stakeholders, then you will not be able to grow. And that's why people say the rich are always getting richer. Why? It's because it's a simple premise that who you hang out with, you know that quote about your network is your net worth. It's as simple as that. Who you hang out with determines how far you go. So we have to be intentional about creating mutually beneficial relationships with the people around us. So think about where you are. Are you a mom? Are you a dad? Wherever you are. So let's go bit by bit. So you are employed, you are at the workplace. Who are your stakeholders at your workplace? And I like to tell people, learn to map out your stakeholders. Who is a stakeholder? Anyone who can have influence over your career. So map them out. It's your boss, it's HR, it's so and so. It's even people who are not directly your boss, but they're in senior management. Those are your peers. So how do you develop relationships with them? It's not you just came in, you clocked out. You know, there are those people who, I'm not a morning person, don't talk to me in the morning, you know. So you may be very good at your job, but you don't have people skills. And this is the thing, especially if you want to rise in the corporate world, it gets to a level where it's no longer about your technical skills, it's your people skills. So if you don't have good people skills, if people around your spaces cannot talk about your people skills, even if you're technically competent, you don't get into the levels of leadership. So map out your stakeholders at the workplace and begin to be intentional about how you present yourself. So what do you do? Take up extra assignments, volunteer even to do AOBs within the space, of course within a certain framework, because you don't want to overstretch yourself, right? But showcase yourself to those people so that they begin to see your strengths and they know what you're capable of. If you leave employment, keep certain contacts. Don't kill them. We said don't burn bridges, but keep certain contacts for certain people. Then get into your social space. Who is in your social space? Where do you see yourself headed? who are these people? Once in a while, call people, just have coffee. Even if they're at higher levels, remember that the people who can speak on your behalf. So call them up, buy them coffee. Don't invite them to Java if Java is your place, but find out what is their place, go to their place. So keep relationships going. That is why, for example, every time your hairdresser calls you or your nail person calls you to say, I've missed you, it's not that they've missed you, it's the money they're wanting, but they're constantly keeping a relationship with you, isn't it?
Exactly.
So that's what people need to learn. I think we want success, but very few of us are intentional in realizing that we won't achieve it by ourselves. So map out all your stakeholders in all the spheres of your life that you want success in, and then ask yourself, how can I actively engage? And then even document small things like, so if Gladys is my stakeholder, I will be calling her once a month. It is as simple as that. I will be having tea with her once every quarter. Why? Because you want to ensure that you're always in Gladys's mind, so that anytime an opportunity comes, it's your name that comes up. And that's how you succeed. Not because you're good. Of course, your good is the basic. Your technical competence is always the basic. But it's the people around you and how you cultivate those relationships that determine how far you go. So be intentional about those relationships.
Okay, Jackie, you're parting short even as we bring this conversation to a close.
When you look at yourself in the ecosystem of the world that's around you, I think one of the things that I have learned over the years is that I need to be authentic about who I am in that space. You know, I'm not going to come into a space and see myself better than the people who are around me. I won't see myself, you know, even by age. You know, in Africa, age is a big thing. You know, I won't use that as the standard marker that, you know, you need to give me hash because I am this number of years above you. No, you come and you study. Study the place where you're at. Study who's in that space. You know, study who, if you're getting a new job, come into a new space, study who is there. Don't come with your history of who you think you have been and think it'll work in this new space. When you're going out talking about your relationships, you know, don't always assume that your friends are not changing. They're also changing. The same way you're changing and transforming. So at the beginning of the year, be intentional about looking at, you know, your network of friends and saying, okay, in the past year, how have they changed? How have I changed? Do I still relate to this friend in the same way? Should I change the way I relate? Should I be more intentional about meeting up with those that I've not been very intentional about in the past? You know, so you look at that, you look at your home situation, and again, we are constantly evolving, constantly growing, and you look and you say, you know, do I, you know, deal with my children the same way I did last year? They've grown a whole year. They've been exposed to so much more in this past year. How are you going to relate with your children, with your husband, with your wife? So you've got to constantly see yourself in an ecosystem that is constantly evolving, constantly changing. People are growing, people are stagnating, and you've got to constantly see yourself, where do you fit in this ecosystem? Because if you can't place yourself in that system and see yourself soberly, you know, that's when you say, hey, that friend I had for 30 years now, we don't see eye to eye. No, it's that one of you has changed and the other has refused to recognize the fact that change has happened. You know, so we're in an evolving, moving, you know, flow and ebb of life is happening around us. We must be cognizant of the fact that even us as people, we are constantly changing individually. Let's expect that people around us are also changing, and let us then see ourselves in the lenses that they're looking at us, and then portray to them, you know, this is not the same Jackie that was there last year. These are the areas where I am changing. These are the things that I want to do better this year. These are the things that I want to expand my horizons. These are the, you know, the strengths I want to build on. These are some of the weaknesses. You know, hanging out with you until 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night is a weakness. That's changing this year. But begin to speak it out. I think maybe as a final thing I'd say is that we are a very polite, you know, society when we're face to face, but we're very head on when we are on social media. We need to find that balance where when I'm talking to you face to face, I can be, you know, authentically honest about what we're sharing and talking about, but also remain polite. And then when I take it into the social space, remember that I may be behind a wall, but let's be polite. Let's be cognizant of people, what they're going through. Let's not throw the barbs. Let's say, okay, what if I was in that position? What would that be like? So this year for me, it's a year of relationships. This is my big thing for this year. Balancing relationships, you know, allowing myself to keep shining, but also knowing that I'm not the brightest star in the universe, and that the others around me who I can definitely rub off on their shine.
All right.
Yes.
Well, we could go on and on with the panel that I have. Mwenesi Musalia, founder House of Major, Jackie Othoro, life coach, Lois Mbo, founder Adira Network. Thank you so much for your wealth of wisdom. And of course, there's conversations that can continue on social media. You can reach out to them on their different spaces on the same. But for now, we actually call it a day on AM Live. Thank you for your company, and thank you for engaging us on social media at Gladys_Gachanja at NTV Kenya. And we wish you a lovely Wednesday. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Have a good one.